And thanks a lot for tuning in. One of the objectives that we're going to have tonight is I want everyone to get involved, so make sure that you ask lots of questions. The other thing about this is we're going to try to have a little fun. We're going to make fun of some things and take a little bit more of a lighthearted approach to a serious subject, which is the job search and how do you get hired and how do you get noticed. So objectives. One, we're going to talk about the rumor that the resume is dead. We've been hearing about that for a long time, and I keep hearing about it. You only have to go on and Google "the resume is dead" to find article after article that will tell you that. We're going to interject a little bit of humor on how not to interview. And we're also going to review the 10 mistakes that job seekers make. And I'm going to tell you 10 things you need to do in your job search. And these are things that are important to keep in mind whether you are out actively searching, passively searching, or suddenly you unfortunately find yourself out there having to look for a job. So I have a question for everybody. What does a resume and Mark Twain have in common? A famous quote, "The rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated." People that know of Mark Twain, once someone had printed in a newspaper that he had passed on, and he wrote back that the rumors of his death had been greatly exaggerated, and that's kind of the same thing that happens with the resume. Every single time that there is some technological advance that occurs, whether it be the fax machine or whether it be the scanner, whether it be Google or whether it be LinkedIn or be something else, there's always a groundswell that says that the resume is going away. What the so-called experts say. I picked this tweet up off of Twitter. Lex is king. So that's what the LexisNexis Law School Twitter feed said. The resume is dead. The internet has killed the traditional job application. That came from the Vestigo founder and CEO, Tim Ryan. Vestigo is an online internet business that tries to match job seekers up with employers. And the resume is dead. Long live the online profile. And that is from Kevin Grossman, who is a blogger with Glassdoor.com. These were three that took me about 5 minutes to find. I could have found 50 or 75 or 100. All of these say the same thing, that the traditional job application is dead, the resume is dead, the online profile, the bio is king. Again, as much career advice does is point in multiple directions. So you have to wonder, okay, what's going on? Do I need a bio? Do I need an online profile? If I'm not doing a traditional job application, what kind of an application am I supposed to fill out? Again, a lot of different viewpoints in different directions. What will replace the resume? Rest in peace. These are some items that I pulled up that from different articles that I've looked at in preparation of this, and I get on my RSS feeds. Obviously, video is going to replace the resume. Social media, Facebook and everything else, is going to replace the resume. Blogs are going to replace the resume. Google is going to replace the resume. Logical employment profiles are going to replace the resume. Personal websites, it's very similar to blogs these days. If you look at something like a Tumblr or a WordPress blog that can be turned into a website or vice versa. LinkedIn, obviously a lot of excitement about LinkedIn, particularly with their recent IPO. And the visual CV. So I want to just talk briefly about each one of these, and then I want to go into a little more depth. Video resumes. They're out there. There are places and companies that are trying to push them. I don't think that they've been very widely accepted. What has become more widely accepted is don't mistake a video resume with a video interview or a video screening. They are two separate things. So you may very well find that a company may be using a video interview as part of their hiring process. Obviously, social media, a lot about the network. Everyone out there probably has heard the numbers that about 80% of people get jobs through networking. And since social media has increased your ability to network across multiple platforms and the efficiency of this type of networking, a lot of people believe that 80% will go to 90%, and pretty soon no one will need a resume. You just simply go and post that I'm looking for a job on Facebook, and someone will come along and like you and hire you. Blogs, there are some people that have successfully started blogs specifically to get hired. It has worked for them. Google, I'm not sure. I guess the thought process is that if I needed to hire a systems engineer with a certain kind of background, I could just go on and Google them and find a list of them and call one up and hire them. Logical employment profiles. This might be a term that some people may not be familiar with. Think eHarmony for hiring. Logical employment profiles essentially means that you would go online to a company for a position and fill out a very large questionnaire, and then it would weight and scale the answers against a predetermined set of criteria, and the perfect match would be made. Personal websites, very much similar to blogs. I think probably almost everyone that's in this webinar tonight has a LinkedIn profile. If you don't, you should immediately log off after the webinar and go set one up. And then visual CV, which is somewhat of a hybrid between a LinkedIn and a personal website. I kind of wanted to bring something to your attention. I got this LinkedIn in-mail to me in response to a webinar that I had done. And it started out, Brad, I'd like to thank you for the relevant information I found in your webinar. I'd like to suggest an idea that may challenge one of your points and would welcome your feedback on it. The writer went on to say, I recently made the decision to exclusively use LinkedIn as my resume. And then it goes into a little bit of kind of marketing. His goal was to concentrate his efforts. He's found LinkedIn to be in a league of its own. It's a powerful platform to gather professional contacts, communicate with your network, your needs and opportunities, adding up the recommendations and groups, and then points out that it's possible to extract your profile in a PDF version, use it as your CV or your resume. And then this individual said that he is finding that the industry that he applies to is very receptive, simply sending them a link to their profile and then using an email as a cover letter. It sounds very simple. But then the next line he states that he's a significant investor in LinkedIn, so that does taint the objectivity a little bit here, and his bet that LinkedIn will become the international reference in terms of CV. Some of the things that he says may very well be true, and they may be working for him. One of the things that I want to use this to point out is that it seems like most people that are telling us that the resume is dead have a vested interest in the resume dying. So always keep that in mind, and any thoughts, and then JF. So I'd like to kind of see if there's any questions out there right now, maybe about this or just to get us started. So if there are some thoughts and questions, Maciej, we certainly can take a few right now.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much, Brad. So actually, one question that come in about cover letters. So if a resume, it may not be dead, what about cover letters?
Okay. Let me tell you my perspective on cover letters from several different viewpoints. As a recruiter, I rarely read the resume, the cover letter first. I was kind of a type A person where it was just show me the meat, because as a recruiter, I often had multiple clients and multiple positions that covered multiple areas. So I tended to have, I just wanted to see what their background was and then try to figure out where I was going to fit them into. So as a recruiter, I didn't look at cover letters as much up front. Now, I believe as a hiring manager, I think that cover letters are becoming more important. A good cover letter is not going to simply rehash or go back over the things that you're already covering in your resume. A good cover letter should be tailored specific to the position you're applying for in the company, and it should draw out things that are not clear on the resume or need to be expressed in order to augment your qualifications for the position you're applying for. So I don't think cover letters are dead at all.
Gotcha.
Another question, Maciej?
Yes, no, actually, Susanna had a great question. Do you think that LinkedIn profiles should consist of the same information as a resume?
My personal view on LinkedIn profiles, I look at a resume as your most business-like document that you have. It is, essentially a encapsulation of what you've done and how you've done it, who you've worked for, and where you've been. I think that the LinkedIn profile offers you a chance to enhance upon that. It's not expected to be quite as dry as a resume, and I don't mean dry in a negative term, but your LinkedIn profile can talk a little bit more about some of the things you do. You can have a widget on there that talks about what books you're reading. You can add a slide share app, so you could maybe put a PowerPoint presentation that you've done. You can expand with references and recommendations, and people can see what groups you belong to. And I think what the LinkedIn profile does for you, and obviously whenever anybody gets a resume, the first thing they do is go to LinkedIn to look at the person's profile, is it lets you make a larger and more whole picture of.
Great. So actually another question is, so apparently also a lot of computer systems these days actually scan for buzzwords before a person even sees the resume. How do you balance, a resume for a person to read versus a resume for a computer to scan?
Okay. What the person's referring to is a keyword search, and when you scan a resume in and you parse it into a applicant tracking system or an ATS, the system, some companies use systems to identify keywords to kind of put those resumes into certain slots or files. The other thing is that if a company has a large database of resumes, that when they need a managing director at a certain level with certain background, they may go in and do their keyword search. It's important in two ways. One is to make sure that your resume does have keywords in it, and there are a number of strategies that professional resume writers use to incorporate keywords. Secondly, if you're applying for a specific position, one of my best recommendations is what I call a markup. And you go down to your favorite office store and you buy yourself 3 or 4 colors of markers, and you go onto your resume and you identify your key 3 or 4 areas of strength and expertise. So let's say that one might be sales. So you would highlight everything on your resume that has to do with sales in green, and another one might be marketing, so you'd highlight that in blue, and the third one might be business development. You would highlight that in pink. And I know they're all kind of intertwined, but you may look at your resume and see, okay, it's 50% blue, 30% green, 20% pink. Now take a look at the job that you're actually going to apply for and look at that position profile and mark it up the same, and look and see how that job description in color matches up against your resume in color. If your resume is predominantly blue and the job description is predominantly pink, you know that you're not going to score well in any kind of a keyword search, as well as you probably won't score well even if someone visually is looking at that resume. And people kind of look at me a little funny when I say do it, but if with colors as opposed to just reading through it, but if you ever go through and mark one up with 3 or 4 colors and then mark up a job description, you'll see exactly what I mean. A different side, a different part of your brain looks at it. Okay, I went online and Googled create resume online, and just some things that came up. Create your free resume, resume now, online resumes, professional looking resume in minutes, simple to use, no credit card, free, how to make a resume free, My favorite one down here, create a resume in Word. If any of you have seen my other webinar about what a recruiter really sees in a resume, you'll know that I loathe resumes that come in created on the Word template, Emerge, which when it came out was kind of unique. It's kind of been overseen. Emerge is an anagram for resume. Just kind of give an idea. You're going to see pages and pages of this, and on the right-hand side, obviously, some of the Google ads. Get a professional resume in 2 days for 90 bucks. Okay, that's going to be of a high quality. Resumes that work, $99. Free cover letter. So I kind of wanted to show you that. I went on to one of these, the Create Your Resume in 15 minutes, and I only spent 5 minutes on it. But to kind of give you an idea, I didn't fill out the content, but this is what my resume would look like. And I could obviously go in and highlight my skills and my core accomplishments and my professional experience, education, and keywords, but I'm not going to end up with a real exciting looking resume here. The visual CV I spoke about, I didn't have time to actually go in and create my own visual CV, but I did go onto the site and I looked for CVs that were highly recommended by the company, and this one was on the front page. So I thought, well, I'll click on it and take a look at it. This is the PDF printed version of what you see on the visual CV. There is more color around it. But as you can see, again, it doesn't have a lot of detail. It doesn't have a lot of information. One of my favorite things, and I want to point this out, if any of you have a blog and you're using that in your career, probably Snarky Redhead is probably not a great name for the blog. Okay? Think about things like that. I still get emails from people with email addresses like snazzycat12. I get things that, I look on people's LinkedIn websites and they've got their nephew's blog, linked to their nephew's blog who's into heavy metal. You just have to be very careful. Always take a look at what you're putting out there in front of people and say, do I want a prospective employer to take a look at this? So that was the visual CV. Then I played around on Visualize Me. Visualize Me actually links back into your LinkedIn profile. You have to give this app access to the API in LinkedIn, and it created this for me. So it essentially pulled some of my key information. It pulled, I believe, part of my summary, which obviously needs rework. Then it pulled my experience. I'm really not sure how the colors on the bottom matched up to what my interests are, and why there's so much in networking, and I'm not sure why trend falls into networking, but this was another type of a online resume. Doesn't say a lot, but it's out there if you want to go play around with it. Then I went to the actual LinkedIn resume builder, which again pulls your background off your LinkedIn profile. This one's not too bad relative to some of the other ones in that if you don't have a resume, this can at least give you a starting point if you've spent some time on your LinkedIn profile. It's got a summary, it's got specialties. I think there's several different I think there's 3 or 4 different templates, but again, people are going to know this came off LinkedIn. They're going to know that you clicked a button and a few things happened and this is what you ended up with. What did all those resumes have in common? Well, first and foremost, all of them, it's entirely up to you to tell your story. My thoughts about that are very simple. It's very difficult for anybody to tell their own story completely and effectively. And the reason being is we're too close to it. When we start to put paper to pencil and write a resume, parts that to another person may not be clear are clear to us because they're clear in our mind. So as we write something and then we read it, we fill in the blanks. So you're going to end up, regardless of which one of these online resume builders you use, you're still, no matter whether the format's good or not, you're still going to end up with the same quality as if you sat down and wrote a resume out and typed it on an old typewriter. The other thing is that not one of these sites really help you understand what your resume should do. And if you don't know what your resume should do, I have a couple webinars that are on the Ivy Exec. You can go to the Ivy Exec blog and go back, click on webinars as a category. But a resume is much, much more important than simply a document, okay? When you create a resume properly, when you work with someone and come out with a resume that truly resonates, you will have learned more about yourself, and you will learn more about how to interview and how to sell your future value to an organization, so that you're not just telling someone what you've done and hoping that they can make the connection that because you were successful 2 years ago, you will be successful in this company next year. So none of these sites do that. The other thing is I think by simplifying the process, they really simplify the results. They really kind of demean the amount of effort that someone should put into their resume. If I can build a resume in 15 minutes, it really must not be that important. And also, they either underwhelm or overwhelm. Some of them are so simplistic that they really don't do much for me. And the one with all of the bright colors, even though I think I had 6 different color palettes to pick from, kind of overwhelmed me with the color and left me somewhat confused. The video resume, okay? We talked briefly about that. Here's my thought on the video resume. I was going to put a video resume in, but I watched about 8 of them, and by the time I got done, everyone in the office was telling me if I didn't put my headphones on and listen to them in silence, they were going to kick me out. If you're in an industry that will get it, and your video resume is professionally produced, and it's on topic, and if the viewers have no technological problem seeing it, and if you fit the company mold because they're going to be seeing you, and you don't offend anyone in any possible way, and you have a really good reason to make a video resume, and you have a compelling script, then by all means go for it. If you didn't say yes 8 times, I would highly recommend that you stay away from a video resume. They are just not widely accepted yet. There are some industries in the entertainment world and some of those areas where a video resume is important, but as far as being out and being an executive, I just don't think it's something you need to go for. Mache, a few more questions?
Yes, of course. We actually have plenty as well. So actually, Frank wrote in, I'm currently applying for different types of jobs, and I'm advised to cater to the job to each position, to each application. I am concerned this means the resume will not be the same as my LinkedIn profile, causing hiring managers to rule me out. Please advise.
Okay. That can be the problem if you're doing too much tailoring on a resume. And that's where you kind of have to take a look at what is on your LinkedIn profile and what's on your resume and balance it out. I'll give you an example of that. Let's say that you happen to have a background that's a combination of business development and marketing. Okay. You need to create a general resume that covers both topics somewhat equally. You can then take your resume, and by moving some sections around and maybe dropping a couple bullet points and adding in a couple different bullet points and using a few different, maybe a few different sentences in your summary, you can make that resume read more towards marketing, maybe 65 or 70%, and 35% towards business development, and then you can flip that the other way and weight the resume more to the business development side. Here's the problem with creating a resume that is unique for every job. You will forget what resume you sent to whom, when, and where. Even if you keep tremendous records, there is no way you can go into a set of interviews and escape those interviews without making some mistake, because you just will not remember if you've got 8 or 10 versions of a resume going on. Now, that doesn't mean that if you are looking at a job profile and you see 3 or 4 keywords that you don't currently have on your existing resume, you can't slot those in and add those in. And remember, the cover letter can help you as well there. I wouldn't rely on the cover letter to get keywords into a resume or into my application, but I certainly would, if my cover letter reads 80% marketing and my resume reads 65% marketing, they're going to be thinking of me as a marketing person. Your LinkedIn profile has to be a little more generic. And you need to build it out with other things so they're not really looking to match up and say, okay, are these 5 bullet points under this person's last job the same 5 bullet points on his resume? You want them looking at some of the other things on that LinkedIn profile. If you're a marketing person, you probably should have some kind of a presentation on there that you've done. That would be my best suggestion there. Tailoring a resume for every single job differently is going to do nothing but get you in trouble. Another question, Maciej.
Sure. Robert asks, what is wrong with using Word templates for resumes?
Well, I'll tell you, Robert, they look like everybody else's, okay? And that's okay, but it doesn't really differentiate you. And I want you to put yourself in the seat of a hiring manager, an HR vice president of HR who has got a stack of 150 resumes, and they're flipping through them one at a time, trying to match it up for that director level position in strategic planning that they have. And they're flipping through resumes, and they see 4 or 5 that look the same. Okay, for all intents and purposes, they have different names, different company names, different objectives, but the templates look the same. So I don't like them because it doesn't take a lot of effort to make a resume look at least a little different than a Word template. So to me, it says, and I don't mean to be this is an insult, but to me it means cutting corners, shortcut. Don't think it's worth it. Not important. You know, and they're little red flags, but you just keep in mind that little red flags become big red flags. So you never want to create anything in a hiring manager's mind that they can come that little nagging thought in the back. You know, so if they look at a Word template resume and they think, oh, you know what, okay, it's a Word template resume, he's got a good background, and then they go down and they find one typo, okay, even the slightest 1 bullet point with a period, 1 bullet point without. Now they build upon that, okay, you know what, they used the Word template and they didn't do a good job proofreading, and things build. So I don't like Word templates. I would suggest just, you know, it doesn't take that long to make something look a little bit different. Use some different fonts, build it out, put some lines on it, do something so that it does look different. Next, Maciej.
Great, that's a great question. Actually, Tony asked, what should you look for in a professional resume writer?
Okay, Tony. First and foremost, certification. Okay, there are several certifications out there. One is the National Association of Resume Writers. One is the National Association of Resume Writers. The other one is going to skip my mind. Professional Association of Resume Writers. Look for certification, and certification means that they've done a number of things. They have studied, they have taken a written test, they have taken, some of them are an oral test, and then they have also been given a background of a fictional individual and actually created a resume and had it reviewed. The certification boards consist of a number of professionals who evaluate, set guidelines, set standards, and they look at those. Another thing I would look for on a professional resume writer is if they've done anything else certification-wise. Do they have a job search strategist, or have they gotten a certified career advisor certification? There are resume writers that will get certifications such as that, but they won't actually do that. They will get those certifications specifically so they have a better understanding of the job search process and the strategy so that they can become better resume writers. Those are the two things that I think are most critical. The time that people have been writing has some bearing. Obviously, the more that someone writes, the more people that they've worked with, and the broader their experience and depth is. But I've seen people that have been writing professional resumes for 3 years that came out of a marketing role that write tremendously wonderful resumes. The other thing is, depending on your background, most resume writers have some form of specialty. whether it be a higher level, executive level, C-level. Some are focus in more on perhaps returning military, transitioning into the civilian sector. There are specialists that handle some special areas, particularly in the medical, the medical field, the academic field, the legal field, and obviously the technical field, because of the fact that in the technical world, everything is changing so fast and the terminology is so foreign to everyone that's not in the technology world. But if you're looking for someone and you're in any form of general management, finance, marketing, anything like that, you don't have to be as concerned about that. How about one more, Maciej?
Sure thing. Actually, we have a question from Barry who said, any resume tips for someone looking for a career change? There's an element of catch-22 of how to be considered seriously by an employer for that role when you haven't gotten experience for it. Which of the resumes or the cover letter do you use to focus on your transferable skills?
Barry, that's a great question, and there are a lot of people out there doing that these days, much more than ever. One of the things that I always recommend is you have to visualize yourself in the role that you're trying to interview for 2 or 3 years down the road, and you have to kind of anticipate what you're going to need to be successful in that role, and then you have to look back and say, okay, of my talents, of my skills, of what I've accomplished, how can I best articulate those in a forward-looking fashion? Okay, so if you are a let me think of about a good example that I've worked with someone currently. Oh, I've got a great one. Got a gentleman that has been the last 10 years in the renewable energy world. Okay, feels that the renewable energy world in the next few years is going to be downtrending and is looking to get back more into traditional energy. Now, I understand that's not a complete career change, but it really is, because here's a guy that's been, green solar panels and wind energy, and now he's looking at, gas and oil, which they're very different technologies. So he's looking at leadership skills, he's looking at management skills, he's looking at those types of skills, and looking at the position that he's looking for and the position beyond that, and what functions do they have to accomplish. So when you read his resume, it is really more forward-looking than it is backwards-looking. His employment and his accomplishments are more of a foundation for his skill set. So he is a consummate project manager. He's an individual that's able to go into these situations that are not operating effectively, and he's able to get them under control and get teams rallied to his support. So he sells himself as a troubleshooting project manager who can take complex challenges and put them all into a neat little package, and then he supports that with some of the things that he's done in his past. So it's a little bit of a different spin. Try to project yourself a couple years into a role that you're looking to transition in, not what you need today, what you would need in a couple years, and say, okay, if I'm there, what will I have relied upon, and then try to emphasize that as much as possible. One more question, Maciej.
Sure, of course. Also, a question came up about, I guess, being available, having your information online. So actually, Sandra asked, how do you clean up or prioritize, your information when people Google you?
That's a great question. Obviously, stuff is out there forever. I think the most important thing you can do is look at what comes up on the first page, because most people don't go beyond that. And if there are things coming up you really don't want up there, see how you can possibly minimize those. And the next step is make sure that you create enough content out there on the web so that it's current and new, so that those older things you may not want to see or want seen get pushed lower and lower. I think that's probably the best strategy that I've heard is, get active online in a way that you create newer, fresher, more visible, more search-friendly content that is appropriate, and that will then push down anything that you may see that's not ideal at this point in your career. You can never make it go away. It's very rare to make it go away, but you certainly can try to submerge it. Little humor time here for everybody. Oh, thank you. Okay, 10 mistakes that job seekers make. One, when people are first thrown into a job, one thing they tend to do is they start the job search by updating and circulating their resumes. That's the first thing. Another one, rush to the classified ads in the internet job sites. Immediately call everybody they know and begin networking. Contact search firms to sell themselves as a perfect candidate. When I was recruiting actively and a lot, I would get calls almost every day by someone saying, I just started my job search. I want to tell you a little bit about me in the hopes you might have something. And the first question I would ask them is what are you looking for? And in many cases, they weren't able to articulate to me what they were even looking for. They kind of just jumped into the job search. Another mistake is a lot of people will start interviewing with any company that shows interest in them. They'll say, I need practice, I need to get out, and I need to do some interviews for practice and see what happens. That type of action is not really constructive. You don't need to be interviewing for positions that you're not interested in or not qualified for. Spend your time more productive. Spend your time looking for the right types of positions. I once had a candidate out on interviews, and she kept saying, well, I've got to go on more interviews, and I've got 3 this week, or 3 this day actually, and she went into an interview I sent her on, and she got it confused with the next interview she was going on, and consequently by the time the day was over, she blew all 3 of the interviews because she was so flustered and had kind of forgotten what she was interviewing for at what time. Job seekers will tend to stress their strengths and experience in hopes they'll convince an interviewer they're a great catch. And what I mean by that is me telling you about me as opposed to me understanding what it is you're looking for and being able to articulate what I have that fits the need or why I'm the right candidate for that position. Kind of not listening to what the job profile is looking for. Another thing is rationalizing past failures and problems instead of recognizing them for what they are and admitting them and learning how to move past them. Job seekers can exaggerate the value of their experience. I think what happens in that case oftentimes are individuals will build themselves up a little bit so they think that they're going to convince the interviewer they're a great catch. Also, you can get into this mental state of fantasizing about how great the next job will be, and there are a lot of times when people will rush to accept the first bona fide job offer they get, whether it's the right position or not. And the real problem that happens there is let's say you're with a company and all of a sudden you're not with them, or you need to move, or you've decided to move, and you take a position that's not an ideal position. A year or two down the road, now you're looking again for one reason or another because you made that move. It doesn't make a lot of sense on your resume. It's very difficult to explain. I know that you can look back and say at the time it seemed like a good opportunity, but really when you look back on it, it probably wasn't a great opportunity then, and it isn't a great opportunity now, and now you're stuck with your career trying to explain this 2-year role in a position that it didn't make a lot of sense to even have gone there. So be very careful. Always when you're looking at a position, envision what your resume is going to look like 4 years later. And if your resume isn't going to show a clear progression and a path and a well thought out set of steps, then you're going to have a problem 4 years from now explaining that. These came from Michael Goodman. He's a senior management consultant specializing in marketing strategy. Excuse me, I got a little bug in my throat here. And he's the author of The Potato Chip Difference. I think he worked for Frito-Lay for a number of years. 10 smart things a job seeker can do. 1, prepare yourself mentally. 2, take a hard look at your finances. Cut immediately if you find yourself out looking. Take inventory and do a full, honest SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, threats, and take a look and say, okay, what am I good at? What am I not good at? What can I accomplish? What problems do I have? Do this before you start applying for jobs. Understand who you are and what you bring to the table. Set realistic and achievable goals and review them daily. Not a lot of job seekers do that. Very important. I'm going to make this many calls. I'm going to do this. I'm going to have lunch with 3 people this week. I'm going to go to a class. I'm going to read a book. You set these goals and review them. If you have the opportunity, develop a job search strategy with some professional help. Get a sounding board of someone that can listen to what you're thinking about doing and maybe help guide you, because when you're doing a job search you tend to get a little more emotional, you're more vested in it. It can be a difficult time, and if you have someone to kind of help anchor you and ground you, it's very important. Treat your search as a job, okay? Get up, go to work. Work is finding a job. Network to build relationships and not find a job. People are very bad about thinking that networking is going to find them a job. Networking is going to connect you to people that could possibly connect you to people that may have an opportunity down the road. Okay, so network to build relationships. Focus on self-improvement. Very important. You've got this time, you've got available time where you can work on making yourself better. And if you make yourself better, you're more valuable, and your job search will become more fruitful. And volunteer and stay relevant. Very important. Don't let yourself get in a rut where you're saying, I've been out of work for a year. What have you been doing? I've been looking for a job. Well, I've been volunteering. I've been taking some courses at the community college. I've been doing this. I've been helping, seniors with their tax refunds, whatever it may be. But volunteer and stay relevant, and most importantly, stay positive. An interviewer can read within 5 seconds negativity. There is no way that you can hide it. So if you've got these negative thoughts towards your past employer, your past boss, your current situation, it will come out in an interview so fast. I mean, it's like they can smell fear, they can smell negativity. Here's the absolute truth, and I think that most people forget this. Your resume is the single most important financial document you will ever own. Martin Yates, New York Times best-selling author. Think about that. Your resume is the single most important financial document you will ever own. The LinkedIn email to me, I wanted to share my response. Hi JF, thanks for attending my recent webinar. I admire your evangelistic commitment to LinkedIn, and you pose an interesting idea. My thoughts on the topic run in a different direction. Throughout my career, I've focused on helping people achieve their goals. I've learned that in many cases, when one approach doesn't deliver the desired results, that one should change the approach rather than the goal. Now, if any of you have ever listened to me, you'll know that I use archery analogies a lot. in job searches, and I always talk about different bows, the long bow, the cross bow, there's some other bows, and having a quiver full of arrows. You know, each bow serves a different purpose, and so does each arrow, and I think the same is true here. LinkedIn does not replace the resume, it augments it. As can a blog, a personal website, other social media, maybe even a video resume, depending on your career. You know, there are certain organizations and people that are fine with a job seeker sending them a LinkedIn profile link, and there are certainly those that are not. You know, the resume is still the single most important document in your quiver. It's not the only arrow, but it's the most trusted one. So bear in mind that nothing replaces the resume, but things build upon the resume. I've got time for a couple more questions, Maciej.
Sure, no, of course. We actually have quite a few, and I'm hoping that we have enough time to cover all of them. But basically, actually, a few questions came in when you were talking about you know, professional resume writers as well. And some of the questions are, you know, do you have any recommendations on any specific professional resume writing services, or you know, are there any specific industry focuses as well?
Well, you know, this is obviously directed. I can without pandering too much to Ivy Exec, but we do have a very strong resume team. We have Charlotte Weeks and Kim Mudadeen, who are both senior resume writers, both certified. Charlotte is the outgoing president of the National Resume Writers Association, and Kim served on the actually, Kim chaired the certification committee for the National Resume Writers Association. And I do have contacts for several other individuals that may be more in the specialist side. If someone were to, you know, be in law or academics, or, you know, as I said, emerging from the military, looking for civilian, you know, we do keep. I do have a short list of people that have been highly recommended to me in that. Let me have another question, Maciej, and then we'll go into the resumes a little bit more.
Sure, no, of course. So what about, for example, actually, there's quite a few of actually asking about resume writers, but what about when you're asked for writing samples? What do hiring managers tend to look for? How many samples make sense?
Are we talking about someone that's interviewing and being asked for writing samples specifically for their, because they're interviewing for a copywriting job or something like that?
I'm not sure. Jennifer didn't mention that, but maybe more general answer.
Okay. Hey, and Jennifer, you can shoot me an email to clarify on that at brad@ivyexec.com, and I'll get you a direct answer on that, and I'll put it out on the blog so that if I don't answer this one properly.
And she actually did say yes.
Oh, okay. So specifically for that, you know, I don't have a good answer, and the reason being is that I think that I tend to, when I'm interviewing or when I have people out interviewing, I say, if you don't understand something, ask questions, because if you fail to ask questions and do the wrong thing, it doesn't look good for you. So if someone says we'd like writing samples, if you're talking with the person or you're emailing back and forth with them, I would ask a clarifying question. And that's a great it's a great interview technique also. Whenever someone asks me a question in an interview or whatever it may be in a sales presentation, I don't have an answer, I always ask that clarifying question. It also gives me a few seconds to pause and try to figure out what I'm going to come back with. I would think that, you know, 2 or 3 examples would be sufficient, but if it was a job I really wanted, I probably would ask for that clarification. How many samples should I send in? Let me move through, Maciej, and then we'll answer some more questions right at the end.
Sure.
Some of my thoughts. If you can afford a professionally written resume, it is the best investment you can make in yourself. You know, the opportunity cost of using a bad resume can run into tens of thousands of dollars. If you're sending out resumes for 3 or 4 months and you're not getting interviews, there's a problem. You know, keep in mind also that about 40% of professionals now are getting some type of professional assistance on their resume, which makes the job climate even more hyper-competitive. Good enough is just not good enough anymore. You know, you can get away with sending a bad resume to a company that may not screen or be as particular, but that's really not, I think, anybody's objective that's in this webinar tonight. If you can't afford to have the resume done professionally, you know what? There are state career centers, local libraries. There are some job fairs where you can have your resume looked at. If you're an Ivy Exec All Access member, we do offer a complimentary resume review that can help you. And also, just bear in mind, job search expenses are usually tax deductible, but I'm not an accountant. Check with them, but you should be keeping track of that. Someone asked about our senior resume writers, Charlotte and Kim. Both highly featured, highly regarded, exceptionally strong, both certified. There's the Professional Association of Resume Writers and Career Coaches that I always forget, and the the CPRW, the Certified Professional Resume Writers, as well as the NRWA, the National Resume Writers Association. We offer a couple resume packages. We have an elite resume package, which has, you know, it's an interview with Kim or Charlotte. It's you will gain invaluable knowledge about your career and your worth and how to articulate that. You'll get a first draft in 5 to 7 business days, a cover letter. We do an online profile update for you. We do your Ivy Exec profile if you're an Ivy Exec member, and we also, you work directly with me on helping you with your LinkedIn profile. You get a 30-minute career session. I should have changed that. I've changed that to an hour with me to be used in any way, shape, or form you feel that it benefits you. If it's interviewing expertise you're looking for, if it's job search strategy, if it's networking strategy. I work with people, and it's not an hour at one time. You can break that up, and quite honestly, I don't really keep track of the time. So I'm here to help you find your next ideal role. And we can take some final questions.
Perfect, perfect. So we actually have some questions, general questions, and also about you know, resume writing services too. A general question came from Carol. What is your opinion about asking for the reason or reasons why an organization chose not to move forward with you as a candidate? She usually asks, but only once received candid feedback that was helpful.
Okay. Most places are not going to tell you, okay? If you're fortunate, if you're going through a recruiter, sometimes you might get more insight from the recruiter. Excuse me. You might get more insight from the recruiter than you would if you're going straight to a company. But I will tell you something that I recommend, and I tell everybody that interviews this. Not everybody does it. Some people are not comfortable doing it. But towards the end of an interview, every interview, close it. Okay. Keep in mind that when you're interviewing with a company, you want to get to an answer. You want to get to a yes or a no. Okay. You don't want to get to a maybe. Maybes are no good. Maybes just hang out there and they don't help anybody. You want to get to a yes or a no. A yes means you're moving forward, and that's great. A no means you're not moving forward, and that's great because you can now start looking elsewhere. Okay. I know it's not a great no, but keep that in mind. Every no gets you that much closer to a yes. So towards the end of your interview, if you really want to know what's going on, you sit across from the table and you say, hey, Carol, you know, based on now that we've had a chance to talk and you've gone through my resume, you've seen my background and my experience, tell me, is there any reason that you wouldn't consider me for this position or for this role? Okay? Now, you're going to get one of 3 answers. Okay, and again, you could phrase that a little bit differently, but you want to get to an answer. You're either going to get the great answer, which is no, I think that you'd be a wonderful fit within this company. I'm planning on moving you forward in the interview process. You get a, no, you know what, I'll have to think about it. I don't think so at this point. Or if you've been put in by a recruiter, they might say, you know, I'll discuss that with the recruiter, and the recruiter will debrief you. Or they might say, well, you know, Carol, I was a little concerned about the amount of experience you have with, you know, PowerPoint. Okay, well, that's okay, because now you have a chance to overcome that objection before it becomes a larger objection. There are 3 times when you can overcome an objection. Before it happens, that's what you want to do in your cover letter. If you think that there's going to be an objection to something about your background, you try to overcome it before it even becomes an objection. While it's happening, that's the purpose of asking that question in the interview. Or after it's happened. And after it's happened is difficult to overcome, because what happens is you walk out of that room and that person says, she didn't really have enough PowerPoint, we didn't really talk about it, and then Sammy walks in and Sammy's a PowerPoint guru. All of a sudden that little problem of you not having enough PowerPoint becomes a huge problem, because Sammy now just has reinforced how important PowerPoint is to that person, even though you may have PowerPoint experience, it just didn't get brought up. So keep in mind, if you want to get good direct feedback, you need to ask for it. Another question, Maciej?
Sure, of course. Todd asked, is it worth to use a professional resume writer before the job search has begun?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I will tell you that working with a professional resume writer will give you better insight into who you are and what you can do and how to present it. It will impact your ability to network within your industry. It will not only impact, it will improve your ability to network within your industry. It will help you inside a corporation or a company, interview internally. It will help you frame how you present yourself. It will help you develop your professional brand, and all of those things, whether or not you ever need to use that resume, developing all of that knowledge and developing that ability and those skills will further your career. You know, if you want to be thought of as a certain person, you kind of have to know how people think of you. And if you want to change the perception and you want to be perceived in a certain way, you need to know how to talk to those skill sets and that background. I know we're kind of running out of time. We can take one more question.
Sure. Actually, Pedro asked a question, a little more, I guess, on an emotional side. But does a professional resume seem not personal, written by somebody else? Does it seem maybe not genuine in the eyes of the hiring manager?
If it's written by a good resume writer, by a solid certified resume writer, it will be you're going to know it was done by a professional, probably because of the layout, but it's going to be so much more indicative of who and what you are than one that you probably write by yourself. It will embody you more. Now, if you go someplace where they write a resume for $99 in 24 hours, it's going to be the most impersonal thing possible. And yes, it's going to come across that way. You're probably not even going to know everything that's on the resume, which does happen. But if you're talking with someone and you're working with someone and they're competent and qualified, you're going to come away from that resume. You're going to work harder than they're going to work, even though they're writing it. Listen, if anyone out there wants to learn more about the resume services here, has career questions, needs some guidance or advice, you can go on to www.idexec.clickbook.net. And my calendar is on the website there. You can select my name. You can set up a 15-minute appointment, and the beauty of that is you can see when I've got open time, and I block out open blocks of time every day of the week, and you can find a time that works for you, and we can have a brief conversation about, where you're heading, where you're going, what your needs are. I'm more than happy to make myself available to all of you, and I just wanted to thank all of you for listening in, and I hope you walked away with a couple good nuggets of information.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Brad. I mean, this is very helpful. There's a flood of questions that are still waiting to be answered, so I do apologize if we weren't able to get to your question. But definitely, please, feel free to reach out to Brad over ClickBook, or you can also see resumes at ivexec.com. That's also an email you can reach out to us. So definitely, we will, as also some of you have asked, we will definitely be sending a recording of this presentation as well. So, when you signed up, you provide us with your email. So in a few days, we'll send that off. So you'll have that as well for your reference. So don't worry if you weren't able to take notes. We'll definitely send them to you, or recording the presentation. But definitely, Brad is a great resource. He's a great coworker as well and colleague And he definitely knows what. He's very passionate about what he does, so he knows a lot about it too. So feel free to reach out to him as well. And definitely thank you so much for attending tonight, and hopefully we'll see you on the next webinar as well. Good night, everybody.